Rachel, welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. It's an honor to be speaking with you today.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm so excited to be here after all of the many years that we've spent working together and collaborating. It's an absolute honor to be here and have this conversation with you and to be able to share it with your audience.
And I tell this to so many people. I don't even remember specifically how we met. I think it was you were on a different client project and you were interfacing with Brittany and Dan,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I think it was about 8 years ago. We were both brought in to work with a particular client through two different sources and ended up working together. And then from there, we've just continued to work on a multitude of client projects together over the last many years.
And remind me of your role way back when, as it wasn't a marketing strategist.
No, I was brought in to project manage a book launch for a New York Times bestselling author. And so we had a year-long campaign with many, many layers. And I was there to make sure we got it all done.
So before we dive into marketing related questions, I think you have a really fascinating background of how you even went to become a marketing strategist, because not only were you in a completely different field, but then it was almost like a gradual building of your marketing skills to then be the strategist on the projects and leading everything. So take us a little bit back in time. What were you doing pre-digital? What inspired you to get into this road, and even your growth trajectory to now leading marketing strategy and being a CEO whisperer, outsource CEO, outsource COO, outsource fractional CMO, like the whole nine yards you can play?
Yeah. So my experience with marketing really all started with a beer and a pool table a long time ago. I was in, I think, my sophomore year of college, and I was home for Easter break. And in one of the small, dive bars in the little town that I'm from, and ended up playing pool with this. I thought they were a couple. It was a man and a woman. And as we got to chat and got to know each other, I learned that they were the managers of a new coffee shop that had just opened in town, and was promptly invited to come in and apply for a job at the coffee shop. So got the job, spent some time there learning all of the barista skills and all the things you do in a coffee shop and a restaurant. And before long, got to build a relationship with the owner of the company, who happened to be a marketing expert. So she had worked in high tech in the Silicon Valley. She had worked for Lotus, IBM, Ingram Micro, and had this incredible depth and breadth of experience in the marketing world. And so in my time with that company, she really brought me in under her wing and started to teach me what she knew so that I could lead the marketing for that coffee company, which was small, regional, had about 5 locations.
The person that I'm thinking of right now?
I don't know. I don't know
if
it
is.
You
afterwards.
Okay. She's actually still, to this day, almost 25 years later, she is one of my mentors, one of my closest friends. And we are starting a little bit of a marketing venture together, which I'll tell you about. Yeah. So that's where I really learned, the foundational stuff around branding and marketing and how to market on a bootstrap budget, brick and mortar business. How do you get the most visibility for the least dollars? And so, having worked in that space, I continued to work in the hospitality field for a number of years, including being the director of operations for one of the largest restaurant franchises in the country, running 7 restaurants with 350 employees on my team. And so there was this vast experience of like operations and leadership development and all of the things that went along with that. And in my heart, I knew that the restaurant business wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I was simultaneously pursuing learning holistic health and wellness, and eventually started my own holistic wellness practice, and brought with me all this experience of business operations and marketing, which pretty quickly my peers started to ask me how I was doing what I was doing, and could I help them do the same thing with their marketing. And so eventually I left the holistic health world, but that experience and that education really informs who I am and the way I interact with my customers, my clients, and the way that I approach marketing and business growth strategy. So when I got really into the world of digital marketing, it was running launches for people, and running kind of fast-paced digital marketing campaigns, as a contractor, as a subcontractor, mostly for people in the health and wellness field and in the personal development space. And over time, what I started to see, having had this background of experience in holistic health and wellness and in operations, was that just launching or just running a campaign was important, but it was missing what the really big picture is and the way that people could have longer term, more significant impact if they focused on some of these foundational things first or alongside their marketing campaigns. And so I started to just go a little farther in and a little farther in and a little broader, and sort of bringing all of these things together that I had done over the last 20 years between marketing, business operations, personal development, embodied living, sort of incorporating all of that together to do what I do today.
So I normally, when I introduce you to people, I always say Rachel's the person you have to hire before us in running Facebook advertising campaigns. What are all these foundational things you work on with people so advertising actually makes sense and feels like a propeller of your business versus what I say is playing Russian roulette with your marketing dollars?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that example. And it has been a great way for us to partner together, because my clients do need you and your clients do need me, right?
Exactly.
What I do absolutely first with my clients is get them 100% crystal clear on why they're doing what they're doing. So many people will think that they need to launch a product, or they're ready to sell something, or they're learning about marketing for themselves to execute in their own business. But what they haven't done is look at how that particular strategy or that particular launch fits into the big picture of their business, and whether or not they have the foundational stuff built in order to grow at the capacity that, if that launch actually works and you actually produce the revenue that you want to produce, can your company handle it? Can you handle it? Are you prepared for that? And then how does that all fit together with everything else you're doing this year? Or
interject and share the company I introduced you to earlier this year, who has an email database of almost 1 million people.
Yes.
And they weren't planning post-launch, what do we do when we have now 1 million people on our database? So yeah, you're giving them that foresight into that. And then simultaneously, I'm assuming too, just because you launch, in August, when everyone in the world launches, that's going to have an infusion of cash for the next 3 months. But then what are you going to do in December? Is you're going to run out of that money.
Yeah. Or if you're going to spend, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, $50,000 on advertising to generate leads for a particular campaign to sell a particular product, when that launch is over, what are you doing with those people? Then what happens? Does it just go dark on them for the next 3 months, the next 6 months, until you're ready to sell the next thing? And one of the things that I think is absolutely most critical, that I think most marketers don't ask or don't get to the heart of, is really what is the why? So many people, you could talk about the why in that sort of grand esoteric sense, that sort of, Simon Sinek, start with why, what's, in your heart, what is it you're trying to contribute? But if we go even from there to specifically, what's your why for this campaign, for this launch? Often entrepreneurs want to launch something because they feel like they need to make some money. They want to make it fast. They've seen somebody else is doing something like this and they want to duplicate it. But there isn't a lot of thought necessarily that's been put into what is producing more revenue actually going to contribute for my business. And just generating top line revenue doesn't necessarily mean I have more profit, or I have more time, or I get to do more of the things that I love. It's a kind of an arbitrary goal sometimes. And so, someone could launch something and have it be, quote, successful because they hit that target that they wanted to hit. But ultimately it creates more challenges and more problems that aren't actually in alignment with the business that they want to build or the life that they want to be creating for themselves. So that's really what I think is at the heart of the work that I do.
I want to have an example here. So if someone came to you and said, we're going to do this launch and we'll do any and everything you say, Rachel, after this launch, what are, in a perfect world, what would be that strategy you'd recommend post-launch?
So yeah, so first off is getting the foundational content marketing stuff in place. So this may sound really elementary, but it's the thing that a lot of people skip because it's not the thing that immediately produces revenue. And so it's getting that, how are you building a relationship with your clients or with your customers in between launches and in between big campaigns? So what are the things you're putting in place to make sure that you're in communication with them every single week in a way that's of value to them? Whether it's, YouTube channel, it's a podcast, it's a blog post, it's Facebook Lives, Instagram, it's your whole social media content strategy. It's how frequently you're emailing them just content that's valuable, that's about building relationship with them, and is really about showcasing the value that you have to offer to them. What is it that you're bringing to the table to be worthy of them opening an email from you or spending time on your social media channels or your YouTube, because we're so inundated with so much stuff, right? So that value really needs to be there. So I typically recommend that people do that stuff first. And now if I am invited in to support with a particular launch or a campaign that's happening like tomorrow and we just need to go, always at the end of that, we circle back to, now what are the things we're putting in place to make sure that we're keeping this list that you just built engaged and prepped and ready, so that the next time we have something to offer, they're primed and ready and they're excited to work for you or work with you. They've gotten to know you a whole different way.
What I'm hearing too is the distinction between being a sales organization and an organization that does marketing and branding. So I would say that sales organization is someone literally their entire business model is just launches, and they're not engaging and nurturing people. They're truly just a sales organization. And then on the other hand, they're actively building a community along the way.
So what's super interesting about that is immediately my thoughts went to, small personal brand, purpose-driven organizations sort of fit in this category of like wanting to deliver value and relationship and all of that. And then these sort of commodity products and programs are like over in this other category. But more and more today, I don't think that's actually true. I know I buy toilet paper from a subscription service that sends entertaining and engaging emails and has a fun social media account and is purpose driven. And they're about improving the environment. And so literally they are building a relationship with their customers that is completely different from walking into the grocery store and just buying like whatever toilet paper is on the shelf. And that's a toilet paper company, right? So if they're doing that, if you're a coach or a speaker or an author or somebody who's like really bringing yourself to the table, it's just that much more important that you're really present and connected.
That was actually going to be my next question I was going to ask. In your own life of buying products, services, education, how do you like to stay engaged with brands? Is that through text? Is it audio on Spotify? Is it following their social media accounts? What for you just as an individual enotices you the most?
I actually really like to see the content on social media. I don't personally love text marketing, for myself, although, I get them occasionally and it's like, oh yeah, I need that thing or, but I think that there's a rhythm that has to be established there. If it's too much, it's annoying. If it's not often enough, I've seen this where, I'm maybe on somebody's mailing list. I rarely get something from them. And all of a sudden I get 6 texts about whatever they're launching right now. That's not really, there has to be kind of a rhythm of like, you hear from me once a month, twice a month, what's the frequency that's like appropriate. And also that you're delivering value and it's not just, hey, this is on sale. Hey, this is on sale. I like to see stuff in my social media. I feel like a lot gets lost in email. Mostly, I have my business email and then I have my personal email, and my personal email is set up to filter all the ads and stuff like many people are. And I really don't even look at them. Like they're in that tab, and every once in a while I go click, delete all, and they're gone. Right. So if you're selling in a way through email that feels very salesy, and it's like clearly it's a sales email versus something that's like entertaining and engaging, I think it's a much better experience for everybody across the board.
Do you like consuming content in a audio, video, or written format?
Ooh, I'm a big audio listener.
I am too.
I love podcasts. I love audiobooks, and I like to be entertained with them often. So I will actually so I listen to two types of audiobooks: fiction, just for fun while I'm out, running or working in the yard. Sometimes I listen to like personal development or business development stuff. Often what I find, if I do that, I'll start listening to it and then I'll go, oh shoot, I actually want the book in my hand to make notes and highlight. And I end up with both. But I love listening to podcasts. I would say I'm much less likely to sit and watch videos these days. If I do, it's absolutely 100%. It's on my phone, and it definitely needs to be less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. The great thing about the audio content with podcasts, I'm in the same boat of, I can multitask. I can be making dinner and have the podcast in my ear. I can be exercising. Even if I'm stretching, I can just be listening to that in the background. And I've noticed I consume content a lot better like that right now.
Yeah, I can listen to hours and hours and hours of content in a matter of, a weekend of like working in the yard on Saturday and cooking dinner. Right. Whereas like video content, it might be, 15 minutes while I'm, sitting and waiting someplace, or, it's definitely smaller nuggets in the video.
We have one client we've been working on together for, I want to say 1.5 years now. And Lindsay always describes them as being magical. I'll just use their abbreviation. I think you know who I'm referring to, which is UCSM.
Yes.
I know there's so many acronyms we use on that account. And
we have permission to say the name of the company if you want to. We can do that.
If you want to share a little bit about the company, and just overall, iOS 14 was a disaster for a lot of businesses. They were fine and continue to produce. And can you share a little bit about why this account did so well in 2021 and even heading into 2022? I know our last launch was not as good. It was still good, but it wasn't.
But it was still really good. Yeah.
Why do you think that's been so successful when so many brands have struggled in the world of Facebook advertising in the last year?
Yeah. So what I love about this example is that it's a little bit of magic, but it's also magic that anybody can do. Right. So I often say there's no magic formula to marketing. Everybody sort of wants there to be a, follow plan A, B, C, D, and you'll get the result. But the plan has to be in alignment with you and your business and exactly what you're trying to accomplish and your values and your customers' values and all of that. The magic that I feel that Upper Clarity, that's the name of the company, that they bring to the table is 100% alignment with knowing who they are, what they have to offer, who their customer is, how to connect with them in a really, really authentic and aligned way that serves at the highest value. And so that's not to say that there are other companies out there that aren't aligned, or that everybody else is like, trying something that doesn't make sense, or, isn't as passionate or isn't as connected. But I think in general, it's very easy to get disconnected from what's really true to the core of who you are and what your business is, and start to sort of follow all the things that you think you should be doing or could be doing, or what other people are doing that may or may not at the end of the day be the thing that works for you or pushes the needle forward for your business. And so what this client did is she stuck to her guns. She showed up 100% in authenticity and in alignment with her business, and the results show for it, because that shows through in everything she produces, in her webinars, in her video ads, in her copy, like just the authenticity and the deep caring for the wellness of her customers. I really think that that is the differentiating factor.
Tell us a little bit about the creatives that we use in these campaigns, because there's not, we're not doing split testing of 20 different video variations. She'll have some iPhone selfie videos and they work amazing. So what is the creative strategy like? And then why are the selfie videos working so well for her versus needing a high-end video company to come in and film, 20 different video variations to be doing just massive split testing against?
Yeah. So I think that the way we approach her creatives is really kind of like a hybrid method. So some people will start like fully with a creative and then try to layer strategy onto it. Some people will start with the strategy and then try to find something creative that fits with it. I feel like in this and in my approach, with my clients across the board and a lot of things, it's a lot of back and forth. And so Sarah, the owner of the company, writes her own copy, but she's not necessarily a strategist, right? So like she writes the copy that comes from her heart, and then she shares it with me and with Lindsay, and we review it and we make little adjustments to say like, I think this could actually get people's attention better if we moved that up. But at the end of the day, it's her words, it's her heart, it's her center that's being put out into the world with these ads. And then the same thing happens with the videos. It's like, here's the bullet points, here's the frame, and then she just speaks from the heart. And that transparency and that genuine devotion to creating value for people shines through. It never feels scripted. It never feels overdone. It always feels like it's just a personal, private message between her and her audience.
This is something I was wondering. So how can you merge these two worlds of a focus on data and intuition? So what I mean, and I think this has been the perfect merger of these two worlds. And I give a different example is one time I was talking to this woman and she is a psychic. And I was telling her about our split testing process and what that means with ABs and testing on different creatives. And she goes, you don't need to do any split testing. I'm a psychic. I'll just tell you what's going to perform best.
Oh my gosh. We all need her in our lives every day.
So you have that where she was completely against any utilization of, AI data, any of that. And then I don't have a brain off the top of my head who's just so in the Excel spreadsheets. And I think if you merge these two worlds, that's where things can become magical. But can you touch on a little bit about that, of the merger of these two worlds of intuition and data and analyzation to create powerful marketing campaigns?
Yes. And that's my absolute favorite thing. So absolutely. So I think that the majority of what's happening in the world of marketing right now, as in, most mainstream things, are really data driven. And I think that that information is important. And when I talk about doing what's in alignment with you, what feels good to you, what makes sense to you, I'm never talking about just like throwing spaghetti at the wall and like seeing what works. It's always coming from a place of having done this for 20 years. Or more at this point, having had all of these experiences, having learned all these things and seeing what works and what doesn't, and finding the common thread is that what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another, and that there's no right and wrong. Everything's a test, right? And so something might feel like it's a good fit, but then when you test it, the data doesn't back that up. So it's really marrying all those things together in a way that works for each individual. And that's where I think a lot of marketers, a lot of business coaches, I think there's a gap there. I think that's where a lot of breakdown happens, is thinking that there's like a formula and I can just take this client and plug their stuff into this formula and I'm going to get the result. So I do really think that it is it needs to be customized. And you want to start with data. So Upper Clarity, for example, this past year, my first year working with her, we treated the entire year as data collection. Mm-hmm. We didn't have anything to compare it to. We didn't have anything to say, we know this works for you. We know this doesn't work for you. So there was a lot of like, let's just try what works and see how this feels and see what rhythm is good. And in doing that, we more than doubled her revenue in 12 months. So that's a win, right? Yeah. Now, could we have dialed deep into the data on one of those particular campaigns and focused all of our energy on like, what are the minutia and testing and split testing and all of those things? Absolutely. And maybe we would have gotten even better results, but that process, that experience, I know 100% would have drained her energy and taken her focus off of serving. And so there's a point where the data analysis loses its value because it's not actually serving the client or meeting them where they're at.
Amazing. I was debriefing with the team earlier today because we're coming into a new account, and I was just joking and saying we're taking over the account from bro marketers. And I think most people who are in digital marketing who have a sense of purpose-driven work and whatnot, they all know that term bro marketer. And it's almost like a running joke in my opinion of like the things not to do in marketing campaigns for purpose-driven companies. Can you share a little bit about some of those things to avoid so you don't have bro marketing tactics when you are working with someone like Sarah, who's just in a completely different world of how she sees the world?
Yeah, so that's great. I love it. So here's the thing. There's a lot of value in what the bro marketers are doing.
Totally.
And the trick is to look at it and extract the things that are relevant to you and your business or to your client's business. And so the framework might be valuable. Mm-hmm. The strategy might be valuable. Some of the levers or the tactics or the tools might be valuable. But when you put them all together in a specific way, it might just feel completely abrasive and gross and terrible and not in alignment with what you're doing, right? It might just be a giant turnoff.
Right.
And so it's not about throwing out everything that they're doing and doing something completely different. It's about being critical and taking what's of value to you that can be useful and then putting your own spin and your own twist on it to make it fit and work with your business. And so, for example, I've taken what I would describe as like a bro funnel that felt really disconnected from the brand that it was supposed to represent. Now it's producing money, it's producing great revenue, but could it produce better revenue if the client's voice and their personality and their softness and their energy and their love for their customers was translated through that funnel instead of feeling like something completely disconnected from it? And I believe that it can. And sometimes it doesn't even matter if it can, because if we're looking at the big picture, then what that funnel might produce this month in revenue has to be weighed against the long-term ramifications and the long-term effects of something being out in the world that does not represent you the way that you want to be represented.
I love it. And if you ever see a company's name and it's Eagle Hawk powered marketing company and it feels a little off then, and they have just some aggressive animal as their logo, you might want to rethink if they're in alignment with your brand.
Yeah, they might not be. It's so funny, being in the world of digital marketing and being kind of on that softer side, right? Is sometimes I find myself in trainings or connecting with people where I think there really is something valuable, but I'm so turned off by the experience that I'm having, right, that I like everything in me wants to just run away from it. Right. And then I'm in a room with 100 people and they're all eating it up. Right.
Totally.
So, it's not to say that's right or wrong. It's just not necessarily a good fit for me. It's not necessarily a good fit for my customers. And that's what I think that that analysis you have to make for yourself.
In your 8+ year experience in marketing, I think well, 8 years since we've been working together, but you've had a whole other life before that.
Yes.
Has there been in hindsight a marketing fail you've experienced? And can you share a little bit about why it created some breakdown?
Yeah. So, it all comes back to this idea that there isn't a magic formula that works for everybody. So recently I had a client come to me already in process and a marketing plan that they were committed to executing. Now, I will say that this marketing plan was from a reputable source, was a good plan, tactically, logistically. It's a plan I might recommend for 100 other clients to use. But for this particular client at the particular place that they are in their business and what their long-term goals and objectives are, it just didn't feel like a fit. And so, I shared that perspective with the client. They were already, in it, already in process, already in contracts and committed. And so chose to go forward with it regardless. And so we, supported the best we could, bringing in the right team and the people to help and to support and to execute it. And ultimately, the campaign did not produce even close to what they were looking to produce. And there had to be a dozen pivots along the way in order to adapt and accommodate to the fact that things just weren't panning out the way that they were intended. And simultaneously, I had another client who was executing a very similar strategy who had incredible success. And the real differentiating factor between the two, the one thing that I would say stands out is that strategy made sense for this client at this time in her business. And it didn't make sense for the other client at that time in her business. And so those are questions that you really want to ask. Like there really isn't a blanket campaign that's going to work the same for everybody all the time. There's so many factors that go into it.
I have a question kind of piggybacking off of that. What lessons have you learned in having those conversations then with, in this case, a client, in other worlds, it might be your boss, when you do have that marketing fail? What, in hindsight, what lessons do you have to share?
Great question. Number one, as a marketer, and even in any realm of your life, to know that you can trust yourself, to know that your opinion is founded on experience, and to stand firm in what you believe in and voice your opinion, which can be challenging sometimes when you're in a space where there are so many variables and so many questions. But really just to stand firm and to ask the critical questions. I think when we are working as like freelancers or contractors, or in the agency setting, it could be easy to get caught up in a situation with a client or a prospective client where we feel like our job is to serve them, when in reality, our job is to lead them. And so to remember that leadership is a big part of what they're hiring you for. If they wanted somebody to just do what they're telling them to do, they can hire, a ground level VA to just go do the stuff, right? They're hiring you to be the expert in the things that they're hiring you for, in marketing in this case.
Let's hear on the flip side. Can you share a marketing campaign that you're really proud of that you've been a part of?
Yes. Yeah. So early in 2020, the timing of this is absurd. I had a client I had been working with for a number of years. A big piece of their business strategy was based on marketing and executing live events, and then using that live event to sell into their high ticket offers. So they would do these events twice a year. And those two events produced 75% of the company's revenue for the year. So this is an event-based business. And here we are in early 2020 planning, and it had already started marketing for an upcoming live event. Like the wheels are already in motion. And then everything comes to a screeching halt. And first we sort of like tiptoed around things. We're like, well, we'll just postpone the event because we're going to be back in the world in like 3 weeks, right?
Still would be waiting to do that event.
We would still be waiting 2 years later. So first we postponed it. And then we thought, well, instead of putting 500 people in the room, maybe we can just put 100 people in the room. You know, we were sort of playing with all these potential dynamics of how to solve this problem. And ultimately what we ended up doing was a 180-degree pivot, turning it into an online event, which this particular client had been really an early converter to the online event, having executed these live events previously, but always with a live stream component that they really had dialed in. So they would broadcast, they'd have 500 people in the room, and then they would broadcast a showing of it with its own host and its own run of show and its own experience to thousands of people who had signed up online. And so we were able to pivot in that moment to a 100% online execution. We, there were a dozen changes we made to the campaign at every single point in order to shift into executing it this way. The execution of the 3-day event was completely different than anything we'd ever done before, because how do you sell someone into a $10,000 or $15,000 product on Zoom instead of being able to sit face to face and have a conversation with them, right? And so it was a massive lift for the whole team. The owner of the company was fully committed, and the urgency and the knowing was there that like, we have to make this work because this is 75% of the revenue. You know, there is no other thing. Like, we have to find a way to make this work. And so we did. And the end result was that we actually produced, I believe, the same amount of money as we would have had we done it live and in person. We produced the same amount of revenue with like a fifth of the cost that it costs to put on a live event. So like same amount of revenue, fraction of like the cost, and, you know, and just like the hours and the days of people's lives that they would fly to a city and then be there for the setup and sort of all of those things. So it was a massive success. And now here we are 2 years later, and like everybody's doing this, right? So it was really fun to be on the leading edge of that.
On a personal side, are you rushing to get back to live events, or are you liking virtual stuff still? Just
so
individual, not like business and consulting for someone.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I'm craving the live in person, but on a small, intimate scale. So I love that we can have events with, you know, 500, 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 people online. And, you know, I can do it from home and I can eat lunch when I want to and sort of all those things. But when it comes to really like connected, intimate group experiences, masterminding, really like those kind of scenarios, 100%, I'm ready to like get on an airplane and fly to a hotel and be in a room with like 10 or 15 or even 50 people for that experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My last question today is, what is the best purchase you've made either personally or professionally for under $100 in the last 6 months?
This is great. Okay. So I really like giving gifts to my clients, and you know, there's sort of that like corporate gift giving stuff, right? I love finding something that I think will be really meaningful and significant for a specific client. And so I have a couple of companies that I like to order from that are purpose driven, that they create things that have meaning and have significance. And so I can select something, you know, like the most recent one was for a client who lives and breathes speaking in gratitude. And then there I am, and there's a candle that's about gratitude. And it was created by a company that employs refugee women to help them get back on their feet. And
packed with purpose?
Yes, packed with a purpose, and gifts for good. So two great companies that allow you to give gifts to people that, you know, can really resonate with who they are, and have that personal, private touch, and then also are having an impact in the world that both I value and my clients value.
So I actually was on the receiving end of that gift. I didn't tell you this actually. I loved that gift so much. It's part of our new onboarding process for all new clients. And anyone who refers us a new client, it's part of the SOP that I go to Packed with Purpose and order a gift for that person.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. They can have the customized logo, the customized message inside. They have so many different variations and pretty cost-effective stuff too. Like the lowest one is maybe $35 to all the way like 300 plus for really extravagant. So it's a really amazing gift giving thing that you can buy for people.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I also think that it brings something that's been missing for a long time, which is a personal, physical, in-person, something you can touch component that's missing a lot in the world of online marketing.
Something I'm going to change up actually is I use the one, they have a stress ball, and I'm going to do some thinking for that individual person. Is there something that I know causes stress in their life? And it would be written on that stress ball for them to grab. Like maybe for everyone, I'll just write iOS 14.
Yes. Yeah. Whatever the technology breakdown is that's happening right now. That's the one.
Infusionsoft and iOS 14 are going to be the ones I go for.
Yep.
Well, Rachel, it was such a pleasure speaking with you today. And thank you for all your insights and guidance on our podcast.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care, Andrew.